Hey guys, Josh here from Red Room Recordings. Today we're going to be doing an introduction to Cubase for the Blue Mountain Creator Space. So to get started, we're going to open up Cubase. We're using Cubase 10, same as they use it at the Creator Space. And this tutorial assumes that you've got your hardware all set up. I'm using a little Steinberg UR22 interface, just a little 2-channel one. If you are working at the Creator Space, you'll probably be using a different interface. They've got the Apollo setup out there, which is an 8-channel, I believe, and it's got an expanded preamp for another 8 channels, so you could do up to 16. But for this intro class, we're just going to be focusing on doing just a home setup, very simple 2-channel kind of thing. So we're going to go through kind of setting up a project in Cubase, and then we're going to get into actually recording some stuff. I'm going to just do a little acoustic and vocal thing to kind of show you the process at least, and then we might even try and do a little bit of mixing on the project as well, just to sort of get an idea for how all of that works in Cubase. So once you boot up the program, you get into this what's called the Steinberg Hub. So there's a bunch of news stuff, tutorials, quick start guides, not unlike probably what I'm recording right now. But for the most part, you don't really have to worry about this, unless you're interested in checking some of the stuff out. The main thing you need for starting a project is over here on this side. So if you've done a bunch of projects under recent, you'll have a bunch of stuff lined up there. Good way to kind of quickly find some of your recent projects and get back into them. They have recording templates, these ones are all kind of just based on number of channels for your project, and it's pretty, I guess, general. I don't think they come in named as anything in particular. Down below, you've got some of these more acoustic singer-songwriter kind of ones that they'll when you load these templates up, you'll have tracks which are mapped to the various inputs on your interface, with the tracks named for what they're supposed to be. They'll have some plugins and things on there that kind of make them sound the way that somebody thought they should sound when they set these templates up. But what we're going to do today is we're going to start with an empty template, and I'm going to show you how to build this from scratch. That being said, you're certainly more than welcome to try out some of these templates. Over on the production side, they have templates which are more kind of band related, or hip-hop ones, jazz, metal, all kinds of different stuff. So the difference with these is that it comes loaded with a MIDI instrument or a VST instrument for drums, and usually some other things too, synth, I guess, in the case of the hip-hop, and clavinet. But so these ones are for if you want kind of a quick start on different kind of stuff. Say you're starting a song from scratch, you want to do a blues rock kind of song. You got a guitar, but you don't have drums necessarily set up. So this would be a good starting point for that, because it'll have a drum instrument that you can play with, and maybe we'll jump into some of those later. But for now, this tutorial is just going to focus on kind of the basics of getting set up to record your demos, acoustic and vocal demos. So one important thing I want to touch on here before we jump into it is this little spot down here. There's a use default location button and a prompt for project location button. You're definitely going to want to prompt for project location. One of the first long sessions I did was a week-long session out in the wilderness at a solar-powered cottage, and I used the default location for that. And for every single song that we did, it recorded all of the tracks for each song into the same folder, so that at the end of the week I had 12 songs recorded, but every single track for each of those 12 songs was all in the same folder, and they were all named stuff like drums 01, drums 02, guitar 01, guitar 02, times however many takes we did. So it was an absolute disaster. So I learned a hard lesson on that album, to always prompt for project location. because that's how you make sure that you've got things organized in your folders, and you'll be much happier later if you do things this way. Also, you only have to click it once, and then every other time you open Cubase from then on, it's going to automatically be selected. So I go into more and empty, because I like to often start from an empty template and then build my own, and then from then on you can see I have this home demo writing template down here. If you start with an empty one, you can kind of build from scratch and then use your own template for subsequent projects. So run through that again. Oh, it didn't save my folder there because I didn't save the project, so we'll do that again. So in your case, you'd be naming your folder, you know, I like to break it down by the name of the song, or sometimes if I'm doing a few songs in one session, I'll break it down by the date of the session. So I would name this, you know, May 22nd, 2020 session. You know, there's tons of ways you can do it, but as the key is to make sure you're organized. All right, so now we're into Cubase. So the way this is set up, you've got this inspector channel, which kind of gives you a bunch of details on stuff that's on your different tracks and things that you have in the project. Right now we don't have any tracks, so it's blank. This window here is your track window. That's where you'll see all of your recorded tracks and where you'll set up tracks for recording and everything else. Down here is your mixer. And you can see it kind of looks like a mixing board. So that's where you set the volumes. There's a few other features to each of them. So let's start with the track channel. We'll get a track created, and then things will be a little bit more clear. There is this little folder track up here actually, and for input and output channels. So if you open that up, you'll see stereo out. So that's actually your main output for all of Cubase. So any audio that plays into your headphones or that you bounce out to a mix is going to go through this channel. So this is kind of the last stop. So I always make sure that that's shown. I usually change the color of it too. All your tracks are super customizable in Cubase as well. So I like to do red for the stereo output just because it's easier to see. So creating tracks is pretty easy. All you have to do is right click and a menu comes up with a whole bunch of different tracks that you can create. So audio tracks are kind of what we're going to be dealing with today. That's what you want for anything you're recording with a microphone. So a guitar, bass, vocals, drums, anything. Instrument tracks, that's where if you want to do, if you want to plug in a drum machine, like a digital drum machine, which Cubase comes with a few different instruments, that's what you would use there. A MIDI track is a track that just records MIDI data, and you can actually assign the instruments to that MIDI track. So you kind of have to use those two together. Samplers I haven't really done much with, so I can't tell you much about that. But the effects tracks are the only, and group tracks are the only other ones I really use a lot. Effects tracks are what they sound like. So it's a track that just has one plugin on it, or you can put multiple plugins on it, but it's really a track that you put a bunch of effects on and you send audio to that. And anybody who's done kind of live mixing, it's very similar to like an aux send or something like that. Group tracks are really just something that you use to stay organized, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But to start, let's just add an audio track, and we're going to add two of them actually. So there's various inputs on my interface. Only the two of them, the mono in 1 and the mono in 2. Mono being, you know, a single channel. So a stereo track has two channels on it, a left and a right. A mono track is just a single, but you can pan it to either side. So I tend to only record mono tracks, just because each track has a single microphone, and it makes more sense to me to treat each microphone input separately. So that's how I'm going to set this up. So the audio input I want for my first one is audio 1. I'm going to call it guitar. And I'm going to add two tracks here just for the sake of demonstration. And it's gonna, the output of that excuse me, of this new track is going to be to the stereo output, which is that main output that goes out to your ears and to the mix when you bounce your file. So I want it to be a mono channel. I don't want it to be stereo. You can do surround sound channels, all kinds of crazy stuff, but you know, for the most part, really mono tracks is all you're going to need. Cool. So I've got 2 guitar channels. I'm going to add one more channel for vocals. Same setup, mono, stereo out. Cool. So if I wanted to, I've got 2 channels on my interface, so I could set up this vocal channel as input 1 and my guitar channel as input 2. So as you see, when you select any of these new tracks that we made, you've got all kinds of stuff in the inspector window on the left here. So really, anytime you click anything in Cubase, the inspector will kind of update to represent, you know, what you can do with that. If you spread this out, there's a few of these tools and stuff that you'll see are kind of the same. You know, you've got access on the track itself to some of the basic functions like mute, solo, record enable, monitor, and then you can kind of open other channel settings with this edit button. Mono, that just shows the type of track it is, and then you've got automation, which is something we probably won't get to today, but to read automation is just where it is more of a mixing feature. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You can kind of program in changes to the track, to the audio. You know, raising the volume up and down automatically is kind of the simplest one of those, but you can actually automate pretty much anything in Cubase. So that's sort of what's on the main track window, but over here on the inspector you can see there's a lot more kind of detailed stuff on each of these tracks. So a lot of this stuff you won't have to worry about too much. The big one is, you know, the record enable and the monitor. Monitor is what you turn on to listen to what's coming through your microphones, what's coming into your audio. So when you're recording stuff, you're going to want to have that monitor turned on, but when you're playing stuff back, you're going to want to have it turned off. This is also where you set up things like volume, which you can also do down here on the mixer, panning, which you can also do down here on the mixer, and this sort of time shift thing, track delay, which you probably want to keep at 0. There's some uses for it, but it's not something you're going to need for your demos. So there's a whole bunch of other kind of stuff down here. These are like inputs and stuff, but the first thing you're going to want to do with any track is set up your input routing and your output routing. So we kind of did that when we created the track, but this is where you're going to change things. So say if you want to do your vocals on channel 1 and your guitars on channel 2, you would go in here and you would select channel 2 as the input for your guitar. Or say you wanted to have your guitar recorded with 2 different microphones, or you wanted to plug the guitar in and record it with a microphone. You'd do that here. So guitar 1 you'd have on one channel, and guitar 2 you'd have on another. Actually, just for simplicity, I'm going to have channel 2 for guitar 2, channel 1 for guitar 1. Cool. So that's how you get it set up. So now that I've got this set up, I should be able to actually record my voice through channel 1. So I'll show you what that looks like. Normally I would press this monitor button so I could hear myself through the playback, but because I'm recording this video, I've actually got a setting for my audio interface that will create feedback if I do that, just so that you guys can actually hear what's coming out of Cubase. Which actually is another thing you should probably make sure you've got set up. So I've assumed that your hardware is plugged in for this tutorial, but to get it talking to Cubase, there are a couple of things that you have to do.